Alrighty, we're live. Brilliant stuff. So, welcome everybody. I know we've been having some gremlins in the system, but hopefully today and for the last session of the day, everything's going to be a-okay. I'd like to, welcome everybody to the final session of today. We will be taken through a tutorial style demonstration of a versioning workflow for spatial data using Kart or the Kart QGIS plugin. And Victor's going to show us just step by step how we can do this really cool versioning workflow. And he's just going to demonstrate a couple of the capabilities of the plugin. Over to you, Victor.
Cool, thank you. And thanks everyone for being there, for listening. So yeah, what I've been going to do is just work with the Kart plugin. So I don't have any slides or anything like that, just the plugin itself. So I will be showing you the normal or most normal workflow, the things that you can do with the plugin to version data. Before I share my screen and show you that, a quick introduction about Kart. So Kart is a software based on Git for data versioning. It's a command line application. I'm not going to be using the command line, the terminal directly. I'm not going to open that. I'm going to do everything from QGIS. As I said, it's based on Git. That means that the concepts and ideas and the workflow itself will be familiar for those of you that are familiar with Git. For those that are not, don't worry, because I'm trying to make it simple. And even if you don't know Git or you haven't worked with Git, hopefully you will understand this workflow and the main ideas. So yeah, the idea is that you can use Kart, but you don't need the terminal. You just can do everything from QGIS. So QGIS becomes a sort of a GUI for Kart, and it's integrated into QGIS, and you can do your normal work with layers in QGIS. And when you do your normal work and add in a little bit of that extra workflow, you will be versioning your data, and then you can go back to your data at any point and do the kind of things that you can do with a versioning system, right? So I'm going to share my screen now to show you my QGIS. So you should be seeing.
Alrighty, I can see your screen.
Okay, it's my QGIS. Yeah, another thing that I would like to say, the plugin is available from the plugin manager, but it does not contain Kart itself, so that Git-based software is not contained. You have to install it separately. It's a pretty easy install. You can download a package and easily install it. If it's not installed, it will complain when you start the plugin. It will tell you that Kart is not installed in your system. That's for the version that is the last version, the one currently available in the plugin manager. The next version we're working on has some mechanism for automatically installing Kart in case it's not installed, so you don't have to install it manually. When it detects that your system doesn't have Kart, it will let you know about that, and it will give you the option to automatically download and install Kart in your system. In my system, it's already installed, so I'm just going to go directly to the plugin, and it will detect that Kart is installed in my system, and it will have all the functionality already available. Okay, so the UI is pretty simple, right? So basically, it has a window that shows you the list of the repos, the repositories where you put geospatial data. And I'm starting from scratch, so no repos in here. What I'm going to do is to create one, and then add some data in there. I can add several layers. In this case, I'm just going to add one layer, and then I'm going to start doing work on that layer and add in my changes to the repo, so I create new versions of my data. So here what I can do is create a new repo, right? I just tell Kart wherever I want to put that. Let me put it in here. I'm going to call this QOD, QGIS Open Day, right? When you put your data, when Kart store your data in the repo, it can use whether a geopackage folder, so the backend can be a geopackage folder, or it can be a Postgres database. I'm going to be using a single geopackage, right? That's for what is called a working copy. It means that Kart is going to store all the versions that I'm going to create, but there's one version that is the current one and is the one that can be opened by QGIS, the one that I can work with. So that's what can be put in a geo package or in a PostGIS. As I said, I'm going to use the default value, which is a geo package. So that creates a new repo. I don't have anything in here, so datasets, it's empty. What I'm going to do now is to add just one simple layer, and then I can work with that layer and start versioning that layer. Right? So in here, I go import layer into repo, and I will have to select a file. I'm going to go to here, GIS data buildings. So it's a simple layer. Now it imports the layer into the repo. And now you see that I have under my datasets, I have one new dataset, which is building. And if I right click, most of the functionality, as it says here, is accessed through right clicking on the different elements. I have an add to QGIS project option, or I can just basically click in here and drag and drop onto the canvas. And that adds the layer. If you see the path in here, you see that as in a geo package in the repo that I defined for the in the folder that I defined for the repo. That is the working copy geo package that I selected in the options. Right. So this is a normal layer, and now I can work normally with this layer. Let me do one thing before. Make sure that in the settings, let me turn this off. So right now I have this layer here, and it's a normal layer. I can do normal work with this layer. I can start adding new features, deleting features, or modifying the features that I have. Let's change a couple of features in here. So let me just edit this layer. And now I can use the vertex tool for, let's say, changing a couple of vertices here. It's a very simple change. So right now I close editing, stop editing. Right now, these changes are in this file, in the geo package, but are not in the repo. That means that if I delete this file or I do any other change, these changes that I have just introduced to will not be available. They will be lost. If I want to create a version just with the layer as it is now, I have to do a commit. I have to move these changes into the repo. I can go in here and say, show the working copy changes. That means show me the difference between the current state of the layer of this geo package and the last version that I have stored. There's only one version. We can see the log in here. There's only one version, which is the one created when I imported this layer, so the starting version. We are going to add some more comments, and this history is going to grow. So I can see the working copy changes, and that tells me that actually there's one feature that has been modified. The attributes, they're not modified, but the geometry has been modified, and I can see that graphically in here. Let me have no additional layers, so you can see this is the new version, and there was the old version, so those are the changes. I have other ways of showing this. We can swipe in here, right, to see the difference, or I can do a per vertex diff, and I can see that there are some, the green vertices are the ones that I have added, the red ones, the one that I deleted, I moved them in this case, and the black ones are the ones that are shared between the old and the new version. So these are the changes that are between the working copy and the last version in the repo. So in case I want to create a new version with these changes, I just click in here, comment working copy changes, and I create a new version. Right. So I say change the geometry. That's what I did. Change the geom. Okay. And by doing this, now if I go to the log, I'm going to see that there are more versions, right? There's a chain of changes that I have in here. And from here, I can right-click on any of the comments, any of these versions. And I can also see the changes introduced by this comment. It's going to be the same thing as before, the diff viewer. But in this case, it's not the difference between the working copy and the last commit in the history. Instead, are the commits introduced by this commit, by this change, and you can see that is more or less the same, right? There's an option here that I disabled before in the settings to automatically commit whenever I close the editing. I'm going to select that just so it's easier. So I'm going to be making changes, and whenever I close the editing, QGIS automatically Kart is going to, the Kart plugin is going to create a new version. So let's make some changes. Let's edit this, and now I can say, let's move a feature. I can move this feature, and if I close now, it will automatically create a new version. And I can go here, and you see it has changed. It had added this. This is the automatic message in here. I didn't do any commit. I didn't call the commit command. It did it automatically. And I can go and see the changes. And we will see that the feature was moved, right? You see that I have moved the feature, and as soon as I save it into layer, it will create a new commit in the repo. So this is a linear history. So that means that after a commit, I put another one, and it's just a line, a chain of commits. But one of the things you can do in Git is creating branches, so the history doesn't have to be linear, and that is useful for many things. So what I'm going to do now is to create a new branch, and I'm going to make some changes on the main branch and make some changes on my new branch, and then see how I can merge them. Right, so let me create a comment branch in here. I'll call my branch. Yeah. So I have two branches now. The active ones is still main. I'm going to make my branch my new active branch. And now if I come here and say, okay, let me edit this layer again. Let me do some more feature, and I can move this feature. Right, if I save, so editing, I can go to the history again, and you see now the my branch has moved, but the other branch is behind, so I can now go back to this commit, because I can make this branch the current one. Right. You see that the feature here, the geometry has moved because we have gone back to the previous version, and I'm going to make some change in here as well. Now we are back on the main branch. I can do the same here. I can do some editing again. So I do, let's move the geometry. Let's move this one, for instance. And I close the editing here. Right, so now I have this in the main branch. I have some extra comments, right? But now I can merge the other comments. That when I move this sort of feature in the other branch, I can merge that other branch into this branch, so we can have both changes from the other branch and from this one. So I can use a merge into the current branch, and I can merge my branch in here. Yeah. Right. So you see this one has moved, and now I can see the log, and you can see something that is not exactly linear, right? There was this other branch, the history diverged in here, but then I merged them, right? For those of you that are familiar with Git, this shouldn't be any, this should be quite normal, right? But that's basically the idea. Everything you have in Git, you have now available here in Kart for not just versioning, doing a linear history and adding some comments, but also you can use branches and you can merge them. There's something that also is part of Git. When you have a branch and you do some changes, but you do other changes in the main branch that you edit the same thing in two different ways, then you have what is called a conflict. The Kart plugin also handles conflicts, so I'm going to show you how that works. So let me, if I can delete this branch, in my branch, I don't need it anymore. Well, yeah, what I'm going to do is actually to create, and again here I could have reset it, but let me recreate it here. So my branch. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I start from this point. I'm going to make some changes in the my branch, and then some changes in the main branch, but I'm going to add conflicting changes. So then when I try to merge them, we will see what that means and how Kart handles that. So yeah, I'm on the main branch, and let's make some changes, not to the geometries, but some changes in the attribute table. So let's say I take the first feature in here, I edit it, and this use has the value unknown. Let's put this to residential, right? That's a change. When I save my changes, it will create a new commit, right? I'm on the main branch. Now I can move to the other branch that I created. Here I'm at the previous commit. So if I open the attribute table, I don't see residential because I don't have that change yet. That was added in the main branch, but not in this branch called my branch. I can do the same here, but let's edit this to be business, right? So I'm changing the same value, the first feature in the use column. I'm changing that. Create a new commit. So now I can go back to the main branch, right? And do the same thing as I was doing before, just trying to put the changes in this secondary branch into the main branch. And you're going to see that if I try to do that, this is not going to work, right? Sorry, no, this is what I'm going to merge. And Kart tells me that there are conflicts. That means that it doesn't know how to merge those changes because they conflict with changes in the main branch. So now if I right click in here, the menu is different. You don't have all the options you had before, but there's one called resolve conflicts. And what we can do here is see what's going on. There's one conflicted feature in this case. From the value unknown, I have added that to residential and to business. So Kart doesn't know which one to select. So I just have to click on the value that I want to use. Let's say I want business. I use business. Now I have everything that I need in the merged result. So I just click solve this feature. I have to do this for every single feature that is conflicted, or I can select one of these buttons to automatically select, to automatically solve the conflict with one of the versions in one branch or the other. I'm doing it one by one. I just have one conflicted feature, so not difficult. I click here. Now all the conflicts are solved, and now the merge operation will be closed, and it just finishes the merge. I see everything as it was before, and if I see the log, actually, I will see that it has correctly merged two branches, right? So more things that I can do. One thing that you can do, and that's one of the interesting things of this data version, is that you can clone repos. That means the data with all the version is in a remote repo or in a repo at the host in some other place. And you can clone it and then work on your local copy. I don't have any remote repo that I can clone, but I can clone my local one. So I can clone this repo that I have here and then work on that other copy. So I can clone a repo, and I'm going to enter here the path to this repo that I have created and I've been working with. And here I can call it QD clone, right? So what I'm going to do is to create a repo that is not empty, but instead it has the data from this original repo, right? and it's linked to that one because it knows that it comes from that original repo. So then we can exchange data between my local copy and this upstream copy of the original repo from where my local copy comes from. Right? So we create this. And now I have a new repo in here. I can, just as I did with the other one, I can drag and drop into here. So now I have the layer. These layers are, both of them, they are the same, right? Let me rename this one to buildings clone so I know where it comes from. Right, so let me turn this off, right? And now I can do some other changes in my repo here in the original copy of this. Of course, if this is a remote one, someone can push changes to that repo as a way of updating it. But I'm just going to do the changes manually in here, so I can go to these and do as I've been doing before. Just move one of the geometries so we can see exactly how that goes. I close this, editing. Right, this is going to create a new version. You see the login here. So after the last merge, there's a new comment in here. If I go to my local one that I clone, it doesn't have that change yet. And if I make this layer visible, we see that it still has this feature in here, but now I can pull the data from there. I can pull from that original repo that I cloned. Right. I can pull from the origin one, and that's going to change the log in here. Now in the log of this clone, I have this new comment, and if I show this layer, you're going to see that now it matches the other one. So I have pulled the changes and the layer has been automatically updated. And yeah, just one last thing before finishing. The repos can, let me just leave this there. There's some options for the repos. One option that you can use is to add a spatial filter. That means that if the repo has data outside of that filter, outside of that bounding box, you're not going to see it, you're not going to work with it. And if you add or do anything outside of that bounding box, those features are not going to be added to the repo. So that's also something you can do when you clone. If there's a large repo upstream and you just want a part of it, you can clone it. You do a partial clone, just with within that bounding box, and you just get the data that you need. Or if you have your local repo, whether it's an original one that you created from scratch or something that you clone, you can actually set up that filter. So let's say I want to add a filter in here. I can set it from the select the extend in here. So let's say I want just the elements within that polygon. I have this special filter now for my repo, and you see that now the layer, the working copy layer changes, and it shows me the bounding box. That means that this Kart QGIS clone repo will only work within this bounding box. Right? So yeah, there are other things that you can do, more probably advanced things, but that is the basic workflow. Is doing changes on a layer and then being able to add commits and create branches, go back from one version to another. Also, something that I forgot to mention is that I'm working with options in here in the context menus, but actually once you add the layer and you just add the layer to a repo, and then from the repo you add it to your project, you don't actually need these, because when you have the layer and the Kart plugin detects that it's a layer that comes from a Kart repo, you're going to have a Kart menu in here that you can also use. So it has the same options that you had before. But also it has one in here to activate a map tool that instead of showing you the history of the repo or the history of a layer in the repo, it can show you the history of just one of the features. So I can click on a feature and actually it will just get the history for that feature and show me the the different values in here, right? So I can explore the history of a single feature by using that map tool. The rest of the menus are the ones that we've been using. Show the log, working copy, show the working copy changes, or commit. So most of the most normal operations can be done directly in here from the layer list. You don't need to open the repos panel unless you want to do some other things. And yeah, I guess that's it. If there's any question, I'll be happy to ask.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Victor. That was really fantastic. I really enjoyed following along on the workflow, and I think this is such a fantastic tool. Brilliant stuff. Oh. We just have a couple of people commenting and saying hi. Alexandra says, hello, Victor. Nice to see you and hear you again. Richard basically has the same sentiments. So we'll just see if anyone has any questions in the live chat. And I'm sure Tim has some great questions for you. Jump in at the bit.
Hi, Victor, and hi, nice to see you again from me too. It's been a long time since we've done.
Nice to see you.
I actually played with Kart over my Christmas break, and it was really impressed. It's such a nice tool that you guys have made. I did have a couple of questions, maybe just sort of softball questions for people that maybe not so familiar with what it does. Like the first one being, why build Kart when there was already GeoGig? What was the reason for building something different to GeoGig?
Okay, yeah, well, it's a long story. But yeah, basically GeoGig, we were working on GeoGig when I was working at Boundless, and that was like a long-running project. There was a team working on GeoGig itself, the application. And then it was basically myself working on a plugin for interacting with GeoGig from QGIS. GeoGig was working fine. It had a lot of functionality, but then it was not so easy to connect to it because it was written in Java. So it was a little more complex to actually start GeoGig each time that you needed to do a call. So we needed to set up an API, and it was a complex mechanism, let's say, to connect to GeoGig. But in the end, we managed to do that. The bad thing about that is that when we were more or less happy with what we had, and after some time working on that, Boundless decided that it was not an interesting project and basically threw it away. And the project became sort of a dead project because it was complex. It was the plugin, then it was GeoGig, then it was this intermediate connection layer that had this API. So it was not easy to set up, and it was completely abandoned at a point. That was a pretty sad thing, but that was the decisions that were taken by product management at Boundless. And when some time ago, sometime after that, when I read about Kart, I said, oh, this is really nice. Also, it's based on Git, which I think is better for using that as a third-party application that you connect to from QGIS. So why not reuse not the code, because the code was completely different, but the expertise that I got from all that time working on GeoGig and on that plugin, and there was just development, but we did a lot of discussion and brainstorming around the GUI for that. Some things like the GUI for the history viewer, that's similar to the one in Git, but the GUI for the diff viewer is not the same thing as the diff viewer that you use for code, right? So we did a lot of brainstorming about that, and I had all those ideas in my mind, and I said, why not trying to apply that to Kart? So I took it as a sort of a pet project in my spare time, doing a little bit of work. When I had something that was more or less working, I am in contact with the people that coordinates, the people that are behind Kart, and say, hey, your software is great. I mean, it's working really fine for me. I don't know if you have thought about connecting that to QGIS, but I have this small plugin, and it seems to be working. They like the idea, so I started working for them, and then together we're trying to actually have a fully functional thing. So yeah, to answer your question, these is like software that runs on Kart, which I think that for this type of thing, it's better than GeoGig, for connecting to that from QGIS, and it somehow brings all the know-how or the expertise that we had while developing that plugin for GeoGig that unfortunately was just abandoned and didn't get anywhere. So yeah, I'm happy that I somehow got I managed to reuse all that effort. So I'm really happy with the result right now, and it's working really, really good with Kart, and Kart is pretty stable and it's working really, really well. So I'm really happy with that.
It's nice to get the backstory. And another question I had was, so one of the nice things about Kart's design is that it's basically serverless, right? You can just run like a local repository and have plugin connect to your local repository. If you want to have Postgres on the server, of course, then you need a server. But they also provide like basically a GitHub equivalent, right, on managed like a software as a service offering. Is it possible to like have a remote without, like for example, can I install a Kart repo on a server and access it over SSH like you can with?
Yeah, you can have that. And actually, I didn't make any demo with that, but if you you can actually clone. If you have the URL, so in the window where you enter the path to the repo to clone, I just enter my local path to this local repo, but you can enter a URL, and we still have to add the the authentication management in that, in case there's a like in GitHub, or in case there's some authentication to connect to that repo. But yeah, I mean, Kart works fine with that, and this is something that is planned to actually support that kind of remote servers in there with authentication and all that. And also the platform that coordinates themselves, they have their own sort of platform, and yeah, you can set up your own one as well, and have your remotes. Yeah, so that's I mean, that's like it. You can have it's based on Git, so you can have how it's called a bare repo, I think they call it. So it's a repo with no working copy. So it's the kind of repo that you have on the server side, and then you can push to that and then pull from that, and then you can put that around some authentication wall and whatever. So yeah, definitely that's the idea. The idea is to not only to enable, but it's good if you can just version your data locally, but of course to enable that idea of having a central repo, and then people can clone it, can modify, can push, can make pull requests, things like that. So what I show
to provide something like a pull request workflow as well.
Yeah, right. That's what I showed here is the local workflow, let's say. But in the end, I think that the goal is to provide something that is like a GitHub-like experience, like you can clone, and you can do pull requests, and you can do that kind of thing. So you can do this partial clones by using that special filter that I showed, but also you can do shallow clones. Actually, you cannot do that from the plugin, but the Kart supports shallow clones, so you can just clone the 5 or 10 first comments or something like that, so you don't clone the full history, so things like that. Yeah. And this is the first version of the plugin, so the basic workflow is there, but of course there are other things to add.
As I understood, reading around the technical docs, Kart is based on Git libraries as well, so there's some shared logic there. Is correct?
Right. It uses Git, and it uses a Python library. I don't remember the name. It's called Git Python or PyGit or something like that. I'm not super familiar with the internals of Kart itself. I'm just using it. Actually, the plugin, the QGIS Kart plugin doesn't call Kart using any library. It calls the Kart directly on the terminal, but then Kart itself relies on some Python libraries for interacting with Git. It's sort of a wrapper with extra things to handle geodata.
My follow-up question to that was, so if that is the case, can one also do all the niceties that you can do in Git, like GitHub hooks and Git hooks, and build your own integrations on top of things that happen?
I don't know if you can do that, because yeah, probably you can. I mean, it's like a standard Git, but there are some things that work. Like, there's some commands, for instance, that if the car command detects an option that it doesn't understand, it might assume that it's something that the underlying Git command support, and it passes that to Git. But not everything works. Like, not everything that is not explicitly implemented in Kart works because of the different nature of the data. But I guess that if it doesn't support it now, and probably it doesn't, it shouldn't be difficult to have that kind of things. Like, I can see that with your, what you're saying, that maybe you can add some, check in geometries before committing. So you add sort of hooks to ensure that the quality of your data before doing a comment or something.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about like publishing workflows where you actually, like, as stuff gets pushed, generate some products and push them out on a shape.
Right, yeah. So you add some new comment and it modifies some other stuff before committing. Yeah, I guess that's probably something that is not hard to implement. But as I said, I'm not super expert on the car internals itself. So yeah, I'm saying that it's easy and it's not so easy, but I guess it can be done.
I'll give a note of credit to the Kart developers as well, that when I was playing on my Christmas break, I had an issue and they were super responsive, like, to my issues that I raised.
Yeah, the work they have done, it's really great. I mean, and Kart is working fine. For me, from the point of view of the developer, it's really great pleasure to work on that, because it's a very nice tool to rub from QGIS. So this is sort of a GUI that I've created in this plugin for Kart. Yeah, Kart, I'm really happy with how it works. Like, Kart, the option that it has, and how well it works. Yeah, definitely, it's really nice and really good to work with that. And for people that are not familiar with Git itself, or they're not familiar with using it on the terminal, it's going to be easier to use it, of course, from QGIS. Apart from editing everything, you can do the full workflow in one single place. You don't have to edit your stuff in QGIS and then go back to the terminal to just comment something or merge or whatever. You can do everything from QGIS. So I think it integrates pretty well in the current state and this workflow that I showed. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a couple of questions coming in from the live chat. The first one is from Victoria. Hi, Victoria. And she asks, are the styling for the layers, such as QML or SLV files, also versioned?
No, right now this is just data. So yeah, that's something that I think that in the Kart roadmap they have this idea of versioning other files, not necessarily the styles, but so you can additional files that's sort of like metadata, things like that. So you can version that as well. That probably can include the stylings, or I don't know if you can version the QGIS project or something like that. But at the moment, it's just the layer files with the version. You put the layer in there, and then you just open that working copy of the layer in QGIS, edit that, and you comment your changes to that layer, not to the styles. Yeah.
Awesome. Next question is from Alexandra, and he asks, can you undo changes in a single feature?
Yeah, like let me share my screen again. So if you see when you open the log, let me remove the filter. This is for this one. Filter. So if you see when I show the log, and then I have to change here. Right, so let me see if somehow we can to see it. Okay, let me do this. So it's this one in here that I changed. So when I go here and I'm exploring the changes, let me move this in here. So you see I've moved this one, and you see there's this options in here, restore the old or the new version. In this case, this restore new doesn't make sense because the new one is actually the one here. But if this commit that I'm exploring is not the latest one, it's not the last one, then it makes sense. But I can just click on restore the old version. So this is going to put this this feature in the working copy. So I can restore the old version, and you see that this has moved right in there. And now you see that I had no changes in my working copy, but now if I show the working copy changes, you can see that I have these changes that I've made to actually this one. So it went back from this to that. So when you're exploring the changes for a given commit, you always have the option to restore the versions for a given feature. So you have a sort of fine-grained control over the changes introduced by each commit, and you can revert them. You can also revert the full commit, but yeah, you can do this feature by feature, just like go into a feature and select this restore all version from the commit.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm assuming it's new combating. Asks, does Kart support the new cloud optimized point cloud or COPC format?
Well, actually, when you want to put data into Kart, when you import the data into Kart, it has to be a geo package. So if you see in this case, what I've done is to import a shapefile, but that's done by the Kart plugin itself, relying on QGIS. So if you have some, if you select the layer to import that is not a geo package, the plugin will take care of converting that into a geo package before importing, and it's done by by using the QGIS capability. So if QGIS can read something, then it can be into Kart, because using QGIS, I can convert that into a geo package and then put it into the repo. So the import command for Kart, it supports geo package. I think it supports GeoJSON, or I don't remember exactly the file formats that it supports, but in any case, the plugin always uses the geo package format to import. So it will convert anything into a geo package if it's not already a geo package, and then send it to Kart.
Fantastic. I think the next question kind of leads from that one. It's from someone called Tutorial GIS Center, and they ask, can you use versioning with Postgres data?
Yeah, you can use with Postgres, but if you have your data in Postgres, what happens here is that if you see when I use the plugin, let me share my screen again. Mm-hmm. So when I want to import something into the repo and I select import layer into repo, well, actually what you're saying, you cannot use your data from your Postgres. I'm going to tell you why. If you see when I click on import layer into repo, it doesn't give me the option of using one of the layers that I have here. That's because it can be confusing. If I say, okay, use whatever layer I have here, then the user might think that then he can edit this layer, continue using that layer, and it's going to be version, but that's not true. The layer has to come from the repo. So that's why we have done this. Like when you want to import a layer, it shows you this file selector to select the layer you want to import. It could import a PostGIS layer, that means, but then you cannot work on your original PostGIS table. You will have to work on the working copy from the Kart repo, which can be a geo package or which can be a PostGIS, depending on how you define your repo. At the moment, you cannot do it because it shows you this file selector, but probably that's something that we can add in the next version, saying like, I want to import something. If it's on a file, it shows you the file selector and it will take care of converting that. If it's on a database, just give me the connection details for that database, and I will take care of putting that into Kart. But in any case, once you have your stuff into Kart, you have to work with the layer that is coming from Kart. You cannot work on your original data source, whether it's a GeoPackage, whether it's a shapefile, or it's a PostGIS. It has to go into Kart, and then what you have to do is, you have any project, open the repo, and bring it from the repo into your project to start working with that. If you open the original one that you imported, that's not version. It's the one that was used to feed the repo, but that is not version. You can work with that. Kart is not going to see it. It's not going to see the changes. It's not going to be able to version that. You have to use the Kart that is in the repo, the working copy layer.
Fantastic, thank you. They're just the last couple of comments. I don't think there are any more questions, but Gregory says this tool seems amazing. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Tutorial Joe says great features. It seems like a great plugin. Can't wait to try it, says Arthur. So some great feedback there. Tim, if you have any last questions, I think pose them now, or we'll start wrapping up.
Sorry, I can't find my mute button. Thank you, Victor. As always, you make awesome stuff, and they're always a great contribution to QGIS ecosystem. I did have one last technical question, which was just, you said that if you if I added a Postgres layer, which is the working copy in QGIS just in the normal way, does the Kart plugin automatically detect that as being like a versioned data set, or do you have to add it in using the plugin itself?
No, right now, I mean, you can, when you put the layer into the repo can use whether it's a package or a PostGIS database to store your working copy.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a GeoPackage or a PostGIS, but if your original data is in a PostGIS database, in the plugin, there's no way actually of putting that into Kart.
I actually meant like you said that you can import your data into, use Postgres as your working copy for your.
You can use your PostGIS. You can use a PostGIS data as your working copy, but if your data is currently in a PostGIS database, you cannot import it with the plugin, because for importing, the plugin opens a file selector, right?
Yeah, no,
we can see that, so it opens another selector, but at the moment, it just assumes that whatever you want to put into Kart repo, it has to be in a file.
Yeah, I understood all that. I was actually not asking my question well, I think, but I was trying to ask is, assuming you've imported your data into Kart, you've used Postgres as your working copy, and then you create a normal QGIS connection to that Postgres database where your working copy exists. You can just add that layer. I mean, it's just a normal PostGIS layer at that point, right?
Right. Yeah. It's the same. I mean, the workflow that I've shown will be the same. So when you drag and drop the layer from the repo into the QGIS project, it will connect to that layer. Instead of being connected to a GeoPackage, it will be connected to a PostGIS database. But that PostGIS database is managed by Kart itself. It's part of the repo. So whenever you do some changes in there, Kart is going to see those changes, and then you can comment them, and then you can do everything. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Okay, so thanks a lot to everyone for your attention.
There's one last question that's just popped in, very end question from Gregory. Following up on Tim's question, when you use Postgres and commit changes, does it commit the changes to Postgres?
No. That PostGIS or Postgres database that you have is where you have the working copy. That means that the version of the layer that is active, let's say, the one you can work with. Then all the history that is stored in like Git stores that. It's stored on a subfolder. For a Git folder, it's called .git. For a Kart folder, it's called .kart. In that folder, it has all the versions. And then when you want to take out one of those versions into the Postgres database, so QGIS can read it, Kart will take care of that. But in the PostGIS database, there will be only one version of the data. It's the active version, right? The working copy. All the other versions get stored in their own format by Git or by Kart in this case.
Awesome. Raymond just says, super interesting, Victor, thank you. Sebastian says thanks with an exclamation point. So I think leading off of that, I just want to thank you so much, Victor, for giving us such a fantastic presentation. I think this is such a useful and relevant tool, I think, for anybody who's making and using GIS data to be able to version and go back and forth between them. I know I'm a Control-Z addict, so it's definitely very, very useful. And thank you for showing us this awesome workflow.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we hope that for a lot of people. Yeah.
And so this is the end of the last session of the QGIS Open Day for this month. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you for your patience and just hopping over to the new YouTube link when YouTube decided to have a mild freak out. I did just want to say for anyone who's keen on, I know Tim was showing his really cool new QGIS mug. If you are interested in looking at some QGIS merch, please have a look at the official QGIS Goodies website. Raymond has actually put up a new design with a really, really cool little QGIS heart on mugs and water bottles and hoodies, etc. And the shop does deliver to all over the world. Here's Tim showing his mug. You're just muted, Tim.
Is that better? Yeah.
So that's one of the awesome new designs that is up there. Again, thanks to Raymond for designing it. So if you want any QGIS goodies, go on there and have a look. It's our very own merch shop, and I think it's very, very cool. So please head on over there and have a look. It just leaves me to thank Tim for being my backup today, and all of you for joining our first QGIS Open Day session of the year. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Victor.
Thanks, Victor.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.